Thank you very much indeed, Letty. I'm really delighted to welcome you to the second in the series of 3 St Andrews webinars this year. I was going to reflect back on the traditional St Andrews workshop, and I thought, well, tradition has kind of gone out the window, hasn't it, over the last period of time. So I'm absolutely delighted that we're getting such a sustained interest in ScORSA over the period of 4 months as opposed to 1 day, and it certainly is helping us build conversation around the topics that really matter and really save lives. I thought you would be interested to know that, I mean, at the last seminar we spoke about fatigue and driving risk, and that presentation has been used a number of times since our last St Andrews workshop, and we've engaged very, very widely through government events across the wider UK, and also using it within various group settings to keep that conversation about fatigue, sleep and driving risk. So what we discuss here really does gain momentum in the wider road safety network, and thank you for using your voice, those of you that have been sharing our information on your social media channels and perhaps reusing our content in various ways. As an update for you, before the end of March, we will have more social media comms related information that you can use to cascade the messages that we are developing in ScORSA, and perhaps we might have a conversation about social media and its use at the third element of the workshop, which is in a few weeks' time. So without any further ado, we've got an excellent pair of speakers for you this morning. At the earliest opportunity following the closure of the consultation about the road safety framework to 2030, we'll have Bertrand Dies, who's Head of Road Safety Policy at Transport Scotland. And today's really about knowing where you fit. I'm a great believer in knowing where you fit no matter where you are in your life. So I think that for us as ScORSA to understand where we fit, and individual organisations to understand what the differences they can make. And I think those themes will come through from Bertrand's presentation this morning. And please do ask questions, whether by raising your hand or in the chat box. And our second speaker is Nicola James, I beg your pardon, is Inspector of Health and Safety with the HSE. And we're absolutely delighted to welcome Nicola this morning. And again, it's our opportunity to use our voice in relation to the review of INDG 382, which in plain English is driving for work. So there's lots happened since the first iteration of this document. There is an opportunity for us to find out more this morning and to have a really positive conversation about the links between this guidance and how we can help deliver Scotland's road safety framework to 2030. So those are the introductions. My role is to sit back and try and keep an eye on what's happening, which is interesting in a virtual session. It's much easier when you can see people around and about you, but we're going to move forward with it and introduce Bertrand.
Thanks, Karen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bertrand Dies, Head of Road Safety Policy in Transport Scotland, and I'm very delighted to present you the almost finalized road safety framework to 2030 that has started from the 1st January 2021, since the current framework to 2020 finished on the 31st of December 2020. Next slide. So before I move into the next decade, how did we fare in the first decade? And this is where you can find the percentage reduction targets to 2020 in the second column of this slide. And you can see in terms of fatalities, we have achieved in terms of official numbers, 43 reduction in killed since the baseline of 2004 and 2008, which is on track and currently exceeding targets. I can tell you that unofficial latest data for fatalities for 2020 indicates that we may reach more than 50% reduction from the baseline. So you'll see that will be a huge success. Then the second one is 51% reduction in seriously injured. whereas the target is 55%. So we are slightly below, but I hope the official statistics for 2020 will meet the targets. Then for the children killed, 83% reduction, which is totally exceeding the target of 50%. 62% in children seriously injured, which is also very close to the 65% reduction. And the final one, 62% reduction in the slight casualty rate, which had a target of 10%, by 2020. Next slide. As Karen mentioned, we went out for a public consultation between the 8th of September last year and the 1st of December. Analysis of the responses was carried out and found that the document was mostly supported. We received 203 responses, of which 67 were from organizations and 136 from individuals. As I said, respondents were generally supportive of the proposals set out. Next slide. This is a video that we have produced ahead of the launch, and in the chat room you can find the link to the video. So if anyone can click on the link, it's a 30 seconds video, and I will come back to you after 30 seconds. So I think that's the 30 seconds passed. If I can get the next slide, please. So what is in the new road safety framework? Next slide. So obviously, as the video showed, we researched what other leading countries have done in terms of road safety strategies or road safety frameworks. And the safe system approach really was one of the main features of such strategies, and we adapted this to the Scottish landscape. Second very important feature, which is part of the safe system, is having targets. So you will see at the end of our presentation the type of targets we are proposing going forward. Next slide. This framework is a great opportunity to demonstrate how road safety can contribute to cross-cutting national priorities. So, for example, we want to make sure that road safety is fully aligned with the climate emergency, is fully aligned with our own new national transport strategy, is fully aligned with education, especially for children and the road safety education in schools, fully aligned with the justice strategy to make sure that motoring offences are properly prosecuted, and so on and so forth. Collectively, we must ensure the safety of every road user, and given the aspirations of our health and the climate emergency policies, exemplified by the Scottish Government's new commitment to reduce car kilometres by 20% by 2030. This includes protection for those who choose to walk, wheel, and cycle. Next slide. The The framework is constituted of one vision and 5 outcomes. The vision is for Scotland to have the best road safety performance in the world, and you can see this in the center, the kind of target in this slide. And around these targets, we have used the 5 pillars of the safe system with a little bit of explanation of what kind of outcomes we want these pillars to look like to 2030. So I will not read them through, but I've highlighted in red what your business could do to achieve these outcomes. So in terms of safe vehicles, your driving for work policy could make sure that you purchase the latest star rating, Euro NCAP star rated vehicles. You could also decide to install telematics and so on and so forth. In terms of safe road use, your driving for work policy could publicize how you want your drivers to drive or to ride, especially with regard to fatigues, the use of drugs, and obviously not speeding. And that gives also the third reference to safe speeds, where obviously you don't want your fleet drivers to go over the speed limits. The respondents in the public consultation said that the vision needed to have a greater focus on pedestrians or cyclists. A small number of individuals felt the paper was too driver-centric and wanted to see more emphasis on reduced car usage. So given this, the new framework introduced the concept of equality of restraints, whereby there is a balance between freedom from road traffic harm and freedom to travel. We also expanded the definition of the safe system as an holistic approach for both road traffic reduction of casualties, as well as road traffic danger reduction, where we are tackling danger at the source. Next slide. The framework identified 12 challenges, and here in this slide, once again highlighted in red, is the driving or riding for work and workplace culture challenge. These challenges have been all being supported by respondents. However, there was quite a significant feedback on improving the design of the road infrastructure, as well as maintaining the existing road structure. While it was felt this could benefit all road users, a number of these respondents focused primarily on cyclists and pedestrians, particularly because of the disproportionate impact that poor road design and maintenance have upon these user groups. There was also a push to make sure that all the document, the framework, should involve the public in decisions making, including disabled people, considering the freight and haulage sector in any decisions we might make in terms of policy change, and generally speaking, ensuring the views of all road users are taken into account in any decisions that are taken. There was also a push to tougher enforcement and tougher sanctions. So what we did, giving this feedback, is we emphasized the need to improve both road design, particularly at junction and crossings, and road maintenance in terms of repair of potholes, clean road lining, and signing. We added a new strategic action to reduce the inequality that has been identified in terms of areas of deprivation which suffered higher casualty rates than areas of more affluent people. Next slide. In order to address these 12 challenges, the strategic the framework is introducing 12 strategic actions that are really high level, and these strategic actions will need to be fully bottomed out, more detailed in consequent road safety framework delivery plans. We expect to have probably 1 year or 2 year annual plan, where these the details of sub-actions will be provided in order to deliver these strategic actions. And once again, on this slide in red, you can see where your business can fit in delivering these strategic actions. So when you have your driving for work policy, for example, on drug drive, you see you will be able to address the change in attitudes and behaviors. If you install ISA in your fleet, you will help in addressing the technology strategy actions. And in terms of enforcement, I would like you to enforce and not just rely on Police Scotland or the DVSA on the roadside to enforce some of your policies, for example, in making sure your drivers have an insurance covering the business purposes, that your vehicle are maintained according to the law, that you are checking the vehicle loading, and so on and so forth. In terms of feedback from the consultation, overall, more than half the respondents felt the strategic action would not deliver the outcomes and address the identified challenges. Also, there was a higher level of support from organizations, and that's what I've tried to respond to in the finalized draft. Is yes, we recognize the strategic actions are very high level, but this is for the right purpose. The flesh on the bone, if I may say so, will be really provided in the consequent delivery plans. We have also, following feedback on this strategic action, introduced 2 new strategic actions, and they are around infrastructure and inequality. We are, as a government, committed to deliver a national speed management review and implement a road safety improvement fund, as well as reducing socioeconomic inequality of people living in areas of most deprivation. Next slide. So how the framework is governed. Next slide. We are reusing the governance of the current framework, but we had a third tier, which is called the local partnership forums. We expect that there will be 3 local partnership forums that will cover the current Police Scotland command areas. And these local partnership forums will ensure that what's happening in the local authority areas with local road safety partners can feed into the national governance of this framework through the operational partnership group and then through the strategic partnership board. But we want also the other way around. We will push the information down the chain to local partnership forums so that, for example, they will be informed of the national campaigns that Road Safety Scotland will launch, and they will be able at that point, to have a bespoke messaging to their local areas. We want really a better communication between the local and the national level. That's why this governance has included these local partnership forums. Next slide. So I mentioned the 2020 targets. Now, how will the 2030 targets look like? Next slide. You have here in this slide what we have proposed in the public consultation. I cannot tell you the exact number, especially in regards to the intermediate outcome targets at the moment, because I still need my minister's approval to those. But what has been approved definitively is the the targets to 2030 that are at the top of the screen. So you can see it will be 50% reduction in people killed and seriously injured, and we go for a 60% reduction in children killed and seriously injured by 2030. In order to deliver these 2030 targets, we will introduce for the first time specific targets for different user groups. For example, the pedestrians or the cyclists or the road users aged 17 to 25. And this is the bullet points in the middle of the slide. Finally, we are also for the first time introducing key performance indicators as well as intermediate measures, such as the percentage of motorists driving within the speed limits, or the percentage of new passenger cars with a Euro NCAP safety rating equal or above a predefined threshold. In terms of driving for work, I'm quite sure that we will introduce the following key performance indicator called the driving for work KPI. It is the number of people killed and seriously injured in collisions where at least one driver or rider was driving for work and not commuting. And we will introduce a further measure monitored at the operational partnership group level on driving for work, which will be named as or worded as follows: number of ScORSA members. And that concludes my presentation, folks. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for those insights. If ever you were wondering what the benefits were or the additional added value being linked to ScORSA network, hearing that firsthand, Bertrand, sincerely has been a major benefit for the network. So thank you indeed. I'm hoping we might have some questions. Does anyone want to ask any questions at the moment of Bertrand? If you want to pop your hand up, that might be the easiest way. There are no questions. There's a question about will the slides be circulated? Certainly there will be after the event itself. Any further questions? I think that just an observation from myself in terms of where this fits. I certainly think that this is very much a population-based approach where we're looking at having the right kind of road safety related conversations across the life course. So whether we're looking at the 0 to 5s, the young drivers, or those who drive for work. And I think that the interest in freedom from harm, I know from a ROSPA perspective, we very much believe that freedom from harm is an important goal for society. So what do you think ScORSA members could do in particular, Bertrand, in relation to what you've just shared?
Sorry, Karen, could you re-ask your question, please?
Yeah. What do you think, based on what we've explored this morning and your early insight into where ScORSA fits, what do you think that if a ScORSA member was to do something after today, just listening to what you said this morning, what do you think they could do as soon as they go back that doesn't involve rewriting policies, that just needs a proactive piece of work from themselves? What would you ask them to do?
Definitively trying to use your own resources that you have produced, because they are completely aligned with what we are trying to achieve. And obviously, if they can pass the work to their own subcontractors or other competitors that are not ScORSA members, that would be helpful, because I do believe the more ScORSA members we've got, the safer the roads will become. As you know, during COVID, and I think in a post-COVID world, I think the nature of the traffic will change dramatically. We have seen less commuting, so fewer collisions with people going to work. However, we have seen increased traffic of delivery of goods, from people doing their online shopping or just asking Amazon to deliver and so on, but also in terms of food. And these collisions will come at the forefront going forward. And these people are from me driving for work. And we need to ensure that they are as safe as possible, but also back to your issue about the road danger, are not harmful to the others, especially the pedestrians and the cyclists. So going forward, yes, I would hope that businesses who are dealing with deliveries would be a little bit more aware of their responsibilities in terms of road safety and apply most of your resources, or the HSC driving for work guidance that is being reviewed just now.
Thanks very much. I thought it was interesting that you mentioned the role of each of us as enforcers. There's that personal discipline, because driving is a very personal thing, as we've explored before, but those of us who are linked to organisations where you're the enforcer, it's not somebody else's responsibility. You need to get things right within your own organisation. So in terms of insurance and maintaining vehicles and loading, and I immediately jumped to the speeding and seat belts, the fatal four, that we know what the challenges are. So I think it perhaps falls to ScORSA to help translate the fatal four into the workplace also. So we've got a few questions now, so that's tremendous. How will the KPIs 1 to 5 be measured? That's from Alan Mauchlan.
Yeah, thanks for your good question. In the final document, I will set out exactly who's owning the collection of this data and using which data series. So you will know exactly how we use the data and how we collect this KPI. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And from Maria Vive, do you think the success is in part due to lockdown with less traffic on the roads? Have we any insight?
The short answer for 2020 is yes. We have some hints that because we had less traffic, we had fewer casualties, and that helped us towards reaching the 2020 targets. But obviously, going forward, we cannot rely on a pandemic going forward. So we need to do other things than just reducing traffic.
Yeah. Thank you. From Jim Reed, will local authorities be able to bid for road safety funding within the Road Safety Improvement Fund?
Yeah, the quick answer is yes, it is absolutely meant for this. But I would expect also road safety framework, road safety partnerships, road safety groups could also bid. So it's not just open to local authorities. Excellent.
And from Brian Young, will the targets for 2020 be evaluated against the year 2020 alone? And what cognizance, if any, will be taken of the impact that COVID-19 and fewer vehicles travelling have had on accidents? So how are we going to mitigate that? How are we going to make sense of it, the impact of COVID, and what we can do next?
So obviously that's a really good question, because the Europe is setting the targets to 2030 based on 2020 casualty numbers. However, because we are in Scotland so low already in casualties, from a statistical point of view, it's always better to have a baseline covering 5 years. And the forecast we have done is based on the 2014 to 2018 road casualties numbers. Going forward, we may wish to revisit the baseline, let's say between 2015 to 2020, including the latest. Obviously, there will be a kind of how do you call it, leverage off because of the 2020 very good terms of casualties. But because we are using the previous 4 years, that will be a good average. So in response to the question, I don't think we will just select only the 2020 numbers, but we will probably revisit the baseline to 2015 to 2020.
Okay. Thanks very much. I've got a comment from Kathy McErica here saying about especially the issues around about delivery companies that pay per delivery and drivers that use their own vehicles. I mean, ScORSA has done a bit of work on gig economy, and that may be something that we take forward into, if we can think innovatively about it, take it forward into next year. We've also been asked about sending out an email that could be used to forward on to other businesses that are involved in collaboration. Again, that's from Maria. And I think, Maria, the comms information toolkit that we're developing at the moment will be essential to sharing those messages. And finally, thanks a lot to Neil Gregg, who shared in the chat the UK stats to June 2020 out this morning that say there has been a 14% reduction in death year on year, but big reductions in April 2020. So thanks very much indeed for that, Neil. I'm thinking what we should do just now is we should move on to our second speaker. Again, this is tremendous, and we're hugely grateful to Nicola for making herself available this morning. The review of INDG3 and what it includes going forward is essential to the success of reducing the statistics linked to those who drive for work. And at ScORSA, we're always talking about where you fit, finding out where you fit and using your voice. Well, this is, and thank you to those of you who used your voice in relation to the framework consultation. So you've got a second opportunity here to use your voice in relation to the review of INDG 382. So we're really looking forward to hearing from you, Nicola. So thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. So I work in HSE in our transport sector, and one of the things that I've been looking at is INDG 382, which was created in 2014. It's a joint document with the Department of Transport, but it is hosted and mainly owned by HSE. Sorry, can you move on to the next slide, please? So, I mean, obviously everyone's aware that driving is probably the most dangerous activity we do, whether that's at work or for leisure. And it's estimated that a third of all road traffic collisions that happen on the roads in Britain involve someone driving as part of their job. We understand that all risks can't be completely controlled, but as an employer, you have to take all reasonable steps to manage those risks. And the guidance document is, in theory, a framework to help you create a policy, to create risk assessments and understand and highlight those risks. But what we've identified, or what I've identified, is that there has been significant development in especially technology and also driving practices. There's been an increase in traffic, there's been an increase in grey fleet, gig economy or final mile delivery, and all of that brought into question the currency of the document. So I reviewed this document, and when I first joined, I was work being undertaken by our science division. Next slide, please. And there was the review that they carried out in the end of 2018 and 2019 with a small selection of stakeholders, identified that the document itself and the methods it used, so plan, do, check, act, it was the correct focus, and the focus on the safe journey, safe driver and safe vehicle was correct, but it was very outdated. Like I say, it was missing information relating to fleet management, grey fleet, but also technology advancements like automated vehicles. So one of the things that I did is I first worked with the Department of Transport and TfL, and we created some work on telematics and the importance of, or what telematics can offer you as a business. Obviously HSE can't say you have to install telematics, but what we've done is we've created a report that identifies the benefits and the bonuses of it. So this review identified what the problems and gaps were. So I've sat down with the document, and I have been through it. And I think one of the biggest things is the industry changes incredibly fast. And by having a INDG document or a document that is in PDF format, it's a huge job to update it. So if anything changes, we're having to go through this huge consultation process rather than identify changes and let people know how to work with those. So what we've looked at is whether an INDG is the right way forward, or whether we should be looking at having interactive web pages that can be updated, that we can put case studies on, and that we can move forward from there. So next slide, please. So the first thing I did, and how I got invited to this meeting, is we created a SNAP survey. And that survey is only open until Sunday. I'm sure you've all had the link anyway, but it is on here. But we're looking for stakeholders to identify what they think the INDG is missing. I personally think it's missing a huge amount. I've now redeveloped it, so it could fit as web pages or it could fit as an INDG. Focusing much more on the safe journey, the safe driver and the safe vehicle, and laying out things as companies you can look at to manage those risks, rather than just offering you some high level guidance on risk assessment and things like that. We go down into we go down a bit more into training. We go down a bit more into how the gig economy does still fit into driving for work, how people that are scaffolders still drive for work, and why it's important that we don't just look at HGVs and vans. So there was a short survey. If you haven't filled it in, when I spoke to my science division on Tuesday, we've got 1,600 responses, which is amazing. Because when I spoke to them on the first week of January, we'd only had 500, so I was a little disappointed. So, thank you to anyone that has already filled it in. And we're looking at moving forward. So there's this survey, and then, sorry, next slide, please. Science division in HSE are looking to carry out stakeholder interviews throughout the month of February. Those stakeholder interviews, they'll be provided with what we've updated the INDG, but it's not the final. We're not saying this is it. We're saying that we've updated it. Is it missing? Does it help you as an organisation? Is it clear? So we've got this document that we're looking for comment and things on. So some will be interviews. We've had a huge response to people that would like to assist us, which is amazing. So some will be questionnaires that are sent out to you with the document. Once those changes have been sort of gone through this stakeholder review process, we're going to create a test website. That test website will do two things. One, it will have almost the INDG that can be printed off as a PDF, but also it will be interactive, so it will lead to other guidance. So there's guidance on young drivers and cyclists, so we can automatically link to the work that the Department of Transport are doing, the Think campaign. We can link to other guidance from other organisations. We've looked at it and we've realised that we need to look at fatigue, that we can link to, we can put links into other documents relating to fatigue. It's a document that is got to cover a lot of industries. So if there's specific guidance for construction, that then again could link through to the construction guidance. If there's specific information for, I don't know, a farmer who would like to take his vehicles on the road, it gives him some idea of information that he should use, but also there'll be much more specific information on the agricultural web pages of HSE. What we'll look at then, once we've got a test bed website, is again having some stakeholder meetings, a bit like this really, where we invite a number of people to sit around a table, go through these web pages, see if they work, see how people think they are. And the aim is that we have the new INDG or web pages ready for launch by the summer. I know that seems a long time off, but I'd rather do it right. I would rather talk to people. I would rather get the right information and make sure I'm providing the right information to get it right. But the benefit of whatever happens, we will have new interactive web pages. And the benefit of that is if things change, we can update them much more quickly, especially with changes in the autonomous vehicles and things coming in. I thought I'd put a link. So one of the pages that we've looked at, looking at following on HSE's website, is they've done lone workers web pages. And these lone worker web pages are specific to lone workers, but you can also click out onto other guidance from other organisations, or if you want a bit more advice on risk assessment, you can do that. If you want a bit more advice on plan, do, check, act at high level, you can click out. But the driving for work web pages would be specific for driving for work, or driving safely for work is what we'd like to do. So I think my next slide says any questions. That is my contact details. I'm more than welcome. Anyone that would like to contact me, drop me an email. If you want to ask questions afterwards, if you would like to volunteer yourself, I know that Rospa and Bertrand are also already going to be interviewed. But obviously I welcome anyone else that would like to take part. Thank you.
Thanks indeed, Nicola. Absolutely, completely enthused by this whole process, because you're absolutely right. You know, the IMDG requires to be reviewed, but the driving for work agenda has changed so dramatically since it was brought in. Because when it was brought in, it was innovative. You know, it was really starting to capture all the right issues. So I'm just thinking about a number of things at once, which is usually the way I do things. I was just going to make a comment about me and my driving. You know, it definitely is the most risky thing I do now, because everything else I do is home-based. It's home-based, or I'm using the roads as a pedestrian, as a walker, as a cyclist, and I'm very aware now of when I get in the car to do my 6-mile round trip to the co-op, which is how it is just now. I'm in my vehicle. And every time I put the ignition on, I think this is the most dangerous thing I do, is driving on these roads. And we've got the aspect of winter driving as well. So I'd be interested, you know, maybe we could think about how we could try and capture that, working through ScORSA, about how people's perception of the risk of driving has happened, because you're maybe doing less of it. And I know that doesn't reflect our key and essential workers, drivers who have provided service all the way through the pandemic, but I'm certainly very aware of that now. We've got a few questions in, which is great. We've got a question from, or a comment from Alan Plum, who's a great friend of ScORSA, who's really enthused to see the fact that we've introduced agriculture as a specific topic area. We've been working from ScORSA targeting the agricultural sector and working with Tiller Your Trailer, which is a sort of benchmarking for trailer safety across the agricultural sector because of the challenges associated with agriculture. So he's really pleased to see agriculture being specifically included. I mean, who is it you're working with in terms of the agriculture sector to get that right? You know, when farmers do take, there's Alan there. Good to see you, Alan. So do you want to ask any questions directly, Alan?
Unmute. Hello there. Good to see everybody, well, virtually anyway. Yeah, Nicola, good to meet you too. I spent 30 odd years in HSE and in the agriculture sector, so it's close to my heart and still is. And I led on the sort of transport policy side as well while I was in the sector. And so have a lot of contacts. And I mean, you asked the question for me really, Karen. Interested to see who you've been contacting, because I with my IOSH hat on, I was on the board of the Farm Safety Partnership for England, and obviously there's partnerships in the other nations, in the UK and in Ireland. But I just wondered if, if you've had any direct contact with them, because straight after this, I'll be contacting them directly to make sure they complete the survey. And Karen, you mentioned Tilly or Trailer, and Jane, obviously, Jane Gurney leading on that. So that's two names, Tom Price at the NFU.
Yeah.
And, yep.
So when the survey, we launched the survey, the first thing I did was send it obviously to all my contacts. But the other thing I then did was go to every other sector within HSE, provide them with the link and the information, the bump that we put in, which was why we were doing it, why we felt it was important. And it went out in a huge number of the HSE bulletins. It went out in the main sector that anyone that's strive for work. As far as I know, it should have gone out to the agricultural sector. I personally didn't get everybody's contact details because that would have been a huge task for me. I did rely on the other sectors within HSE sending it out. I know it went out via Wish, which is how I got put onto Karen. I know it went out via construction because a huge number of my responses have been construction related. But I did ask the agricultural sector to send it out. How they sent it out could have just been e-bulletin wise. And I suppose it then does depend on who signs up for those. But it did go out in all HSE bulletin.
I'll do my best to encourage some responses by Sunday from colleagues.
It's difficult because obviously the guidance as it stands does not say agriculture in it. But actually it also, I think one of the other questions is grey fleet. It doesn't mention grey fleet. It doesn't mention telematics as it stands at the moment. And all of those things are incredibly important. So I think one of the other questions is about, are we giving guidance on telematics? What we've done is we've had a study created that's looked at the benefit, but also one of the things we say is if you're going to introduce telematics, you must involve your workforces, you must talk to their representatives, and you must, get everyone to buy into something. There's no point just putting cameras in a vehicle or measuring how fast somebody goes and how harshly they brake when they go around a corner. You have to talk to your workforce, because if it doesn't work for them, if it makes things more difficult or it introduces more distraction or creates more stress, then that's not the way to go. So there is advice in the newer guidance that I've written on stress, on fatigue, on distraction. I've tried to look at all areas that I feel as a driver personally, because I do a lot of driving for work, that affect me. I don't drive as much for work as I did, but it's looking at all of those things. I own my own vehicle, so what responsibility should my company have on the fact I own and drive my own vehicle for work? So we're trying to give much clearer guidance on what you should be looking for. It's not all the answers, because we can't give all the answers, but it's asking you to ask yourself questions. But the key in all of it, you need management buy-in from the top, and you must involve your workforce.
Thanks so much. I'm sure Alan will help spread the word in the agricultural network and get some perhaps champions to come through to be part of the interview process, that would
be brilliant. Thank you very much.
Really useful. Thanks very much, Alan. We've also got Neil Gregg who's highlighted, more guidance on grey fleet responsibilities and best practices. And again, you've said that that's something that's going to be included. And I would encourage, do you want to ask any supplementary questions about that, Neil, at all?
I think Neil is on my list of people to contact, or has contacted me, haven't you?
Yes, we are waiting to get a date agreed to have a chat with you all about
it. Brilliant.
We made a couple of extra items about this as well. I think the fact you're going online will really help, because I think that was one of our problems, was that the links weren't always there to all the organisations. But now you've
and I think that's better. Yeah. And one of the things is, obviously, if everybody turns around and says, no, we need a PDF, we'd have to look at it. But I think, personally, interactive web pages that you can go to, you can read the section that's relevant to you. You can also find other information, other links. And it allows us to put the links in to the ROSPA guidance on fatigue. It allows us to do all of those things that we can't do in a document that is a PDF that is there to be used, and it's only okay the day it's printed. I think
as a document, it's very important. I think overall we would like to see HSE getting more powers around enforcing regulations around fleet guidance and so on. We're starting to see that coming into procurement. England and I think Transport Scotland are going this way as well. You can only bid for public contracts if you have a risk policy in place, that kind of thing. So I think all working together with the new guidance, it's looking good.
Yeah.
I think that I can only echo what Neil said about linking through to what is easiest to find within a local context. So we've heard from Bertrand earlier this morning, and I do think that the two presentations work so well together because it's letting us look at the HSE big picture and thinking, how do we make this fit within a Scottish context? We talk context, culture, industry, so how does that work? I wondered if I could just ask Bertrand just to maybe give a bit of insight into that, the conflicting vehicles element that was in the PACT document, the PACT presentation from the other week. I can't remember exactly what the title of the document was, but it's to do with what kills people on our roads. That's a paraphrase of it. But I thought the conflicting vehicles element of that would be quite interesting for ScORSA members to hear directly from you, Bertrand, if that's possible.
Yeah, that's fine. So PACS did a good analysis on the Stax 19's road casualties from a different angle that usually is done by road safety policy guys, etc. That are normally focusing on the casualties themselves. They looked at the cause of the casualty. What is the danger of what caused the casualties? And doing this, they also applied the distance traveled so that they could calculate what we called a road casualty rate per distance traveled. And there is one element that stood out, is actually the most dangerous vehicles per distance traveled is growing, is very much like the LGVs and vans, which were not generally picked up by the previous approach based on casualty numbers only. And this is so much important to look at this way, given the new context where, Scottish government and local authorities in Scotland are pushing for more active travel. Therefore, the exposure of vulnerable road users is heightened, especially by what I said previously, the rise of the gig economy, especially with the number of vehicles in vans and LGVs. Okay, so that's where having this road danger approach is bringing new risks to the forefront. And PACS did this very impactful in an impactful way. I would, if you've got the possibility to put on the chat the links to the report, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, I can, hopefully Carolyn could perhaps find that. I know we've got the presentation, Carolyn, because it was shared at the National Road Safety Committee meeting. So if it's doable to put that up in the chat, that would be great. We've also had Bud had spoken again. You've alluded to the telematics issue, Nicola. And many professional drivers find in-cab monitoring devices threatening and intrusive. And you've given the insight, that it should be an all-encompassing conversation about the introduction there. I mean, Bud, did you want to ask any supplementary questions on that at all? Or make any further comments from your perspective?
Yes, sorry, Karen. I was trouble finding where the mute was. I think, to be honest, I think Nicola answered the question. I mean, we get a huge number of questions raised by drivers about telematic systems, and they're really suspicious of them. There's been lots of rumours, mostly unfounded, I would say, about videos in cabs and videos watching drivers. And we know that a lot of the modern telematics can look at braking, accelerating, whatever. So there is a lot of suspicion, and I think it's a significant cause of stress, actually, amongst a lot of drivers. But I was pleased with what Nicola said, because I think it's really important that it's introduced in a way that gets the support of drivers. Because clearly there are some things about telematics that can be helpful to people to understand the way they're driving. But, you know, the overriding kind of view from drivers is one of suspicion about what their organisation is actually doing and how the extent to which they're monitoring them and whatever. So it is important to introduce that in a kind of sympathetic way.
Thanks very much, indeed, Bud. I mean, I had a look at the TRL DFT research piece earlier this morning, and it certainly reflects what you were saying, Nicola, about you know, make sure the system matches your needs, manage the data so people aren't overwhelmed, because I think sometimes we did some work a number of years ago with black box technology. That's what we called it then. And that sounds really old-fashioned now, you know, but black box technology and young drivers, and again, that was through ScORSA, and I know that some of the people involved were just overwhelmed by how noisy all the data was. There were so many different things to look at and so many different things to consider. So the research is very much about make sure the system matches your needs, manage the data so you're not overwhelmed. But it's very much exactly what you've said is about. It's embedded within a good management system and strong safety leadership, which resonates, I'm sure, with everybody who's listening this morning. But it also reflects on the fact that maybe this is something for the future, is that the evaluation of safety-focused telematics within a fleet context is limited. So again, I suppose we need to think about adding to the evidence base with all this work that we're doing. I mean, does anyone have any comments on the evaluation of these systems as opposed to the using them? You know, because for us, all the way through COVID, we've been talking about pausing things. We haven't said about stopping and starting, because people really don't like to be told to stop things, do they? You know, so our whole thing has been about pausing and prioritising your people, which is what these two presentations have been about this morning, really. And then manage your driving risk as you would any other risk to your organisation, even within the pandemic. You know, update your risk management plans, speak to your people, and the E is for evaluation. Evaluate what have you done differently and evaluate it. And I think evaluation can be maybe the poor relation in how we do things sometimes. So have you any comments on, Nicola, on how we could be more rigorous in collecting data that can inform the next steps for yourselves?
I think, obviously, the more data you collect, the more you need to do with it. There's no point collecting any data and then just sitting on it. So if you collect what is necessary, I think that's the key, isn't it? Is there's no point collecting everything, because then you become bogged down in it. You collect what you need to. So if you need to collect data on, you know, journey times, and so you can then look at actually when it happens journey times, or if you need to collect data on harsh braking because you're going through massive amounts of brake pads, and you notice it's always on the same bits of road or the same types of vehicle, you know. But it's about using that not as a stick to beat your drivers with. It's about using it as the carrot to assist moving forward. And I think that is why a lot of drivers dislike telematics and all that it can bring, because they feel that it's used as a stick to beat them with.
I think, like, when does anyone have any other comments on what Nicola's just said? I'm conscious that.
Can I say something, Karen?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, this for me, I've been told that the same issues about Big Brother in the business fleets having this telematics on. I think from the start it's so important to involve your drivers in accepting those. And what has worked quite nicely is actually bonuses, providing bonuses for people who are driving the best. Rather than the stick, you give the carrot, and that works. There has been a feedback given to me by some fleet managers.
Yeah, I kind of think that was very colloquial, wasn't it? But I'm sitting outside in the sunshine. I'm going to adjust. For me, there is that whole piece about transferable skills that if you get driving for work right, as you're saying, Bertrand, so this is how you can enhance your driving and this is how you can keep yourself safe. It's that driving is a life skill. So you take all those good habits that you're encouraged to develop through being supported to drive more effectively and efficiently into your non-work driving. And we've had a comment here from Frank Davidson. I don't know, Frank, do you want to ask that or make that observation to the group as opposed to me paraphrasing it from the Q&A, please? I'm happy to paraphrase it if that would be the better option for you. Well, Frank's providing a comment about onboard vehicle monitoring that was introduced 5 to 6 years ago, including forward-facing and near-side rear-facing cameras in all the vehicles. There were initially objections, but over a period of time there was this confidence that not only were there to ensure safe driving, but not to be used as a big stick to beat people with. Now we've got 5 camera systems, including driver-facing cameras. Thanks very much, Nicola. I'm going to just break off speaking there and say hugely grateful. Are you going to be putting another push out to people for responses?
I won't at the moment, but when I come to the next stage, again, I will communicate in the same way to say that this is the work. And, but I think I've reached a huge audience this time, and I've got a lot of people that are science vision a contact to speak to or provide questionnaires to. And I think I've covered a lot more industry. One of the things I was very conscious of is I was very English centric, rather than taking in Scotland and Wales as well, but also that I was very road traffic centric and I needed to do that. So that's why we did the SNAP survey. I made such a big thing of pushing it out via construction, wish, agriculture, because I felt that I needed the views from other people, because it isn't just lorry drivers that drive to work.
Yeah.
So, but I am really, really sorry. I had a meeting start at 11 and I'm now getting a where are you?
Okay, thank you so much. I hope we'll catch up soon.
No, thank you, everyone.
Right, thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Frank's been unable to join. He said he's unable to speak. Not sure why, because he is unmuted. So, can you help out there, Letty, at all? Is that something you could have a quick look at?
Yeah, I'll just send him a message now.
Right. Thanks. We've had a number of really positive observations with respect to the use of telematics as a life-enhancing piece for drivers. Sharon, you've mentioned about your drivers and what they would like as a reward or recognition. Do you want to give some insights into that, Sharon?
Yeah, hi Karen, hi everybody. Yeah. So we do use telematics, and what we do is we feed it into a management system so that every month every line manager gets a report on how their vehicles are performing. But at the same time, the drivers also get a text message to tell them their scores. And we asked them, we had these big meetings, will we give them driver days away? Will we do this? Will we do team building and things? And actually the driver came out and told us they just wanted a thank you. didn't want any big prizes or bonuses or anything like that. They just wanted somebody to say, well done, because they felt that actually when they came up as the worst drivers, we were quick enough to get on the phone to them then. So we've kind of changed that culture, and the drivers that are performing poorly, they do have a conversation with their manager every month, but so does everybody. Every driver has that conversation as well. So yeah, that's worked really well for us.
Perfect. I think it's really important to have the right conversation at the right time with people, irrespective of the topic around whether it's driver health, fatigue, vehicle maintenance, or speeding, heavy braking, all those issues. If you're in the routine of having a conversation with your people, these conversations become much more straightforward, I believe.
Yeah, and we did have a good group of drivers that actually had to transfer into some older vehicles, and they didn't have the same hardware. And the drivers then felt that they wanted back into the vehicles that had all the on-board technology, because they felt as though they were being penalised by getting old hardware, that their scores weren't as good. They didn't have the in-cab feedback, and you know, they were like, that's not fair, my score's gone down because I've been taken out of my vehicle. So we have found that the drivers are actually wanting the technology now, as opposed to thinking it's something to spy on them, it's Big Brother. You know, they have turned it into their kind of probably a little bit of a competition between teams as well. But it's not that way across the organisation, but the drivers within individual teams have kind of got little league tables going on, and, you know, what's your score each month. So we are finding that it's actually been very well accepted, and we're now starting to look at kind of telematics for company car drivers and for the grey fleet as well. So looking at some app-based telematics support that we can offer to people on a voluntary basis as well. So it's tough to get it past the trade unions and get it past the drivers, but like you said already, if you have that conversation, you keep people on board, I really think you can get there.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. And Frank, are you able to contribute at the moment? Did you manage to help Frank out, Letty?
I've sent him the details, so just waiting to see if he can get his microphone to work or not, or he can phone in.
Okay, that's great. We'll see how that works. One question that we didn't get up. Well, it's not about opportunity. It's about, we understand from Bertrand's contribution about those who drive for work, and I think I'm right in reflecting, Bertrand, that you want to start identifying where vehicles that are involved in collisions, incidents on our roads in Scotland, you want to identify whether people have been driving or riding for work. Is that correct, Yep?
Yeah, that's correct. But hopefully Stats 19 will be more accurate now that the police force in Scotland are using the new crash system, which is a little bit better in recording, you know, the purpose of the journey. Because in the old system, we had poor data on, you know, the driving to work. But hopefully with the new crash, we will have better data on really finding the numbers of people having collision for when driving to work.
Yeah. So that for me, yeah, I thought that was my recollection, but I just wanted to confirm it since we're recording this for other people to listen in to use. So on the basis that we have better data, and we know that these are people who are driving for work, it'll be interesting to know where that might go in respect of the HSE, and nobody's mentioned RIDOR yet, but the reporting of these as work-related data pieces, data sets. I mean, I don't know, Bud, do you want to come back in on that and talk about reporting? I mean, for me, the data behind each data point, there's a person in their family and a community. So that's very much the message that's come over from the new road safety framework. But I'm just wondering about yourselves and sort of RIDOR reporting, and whether you think this could be a step towards that, really encouraging it.
I think that isn't in the meeting anymore.
All right, okay. Does anyone else want to make any reflection on the reporting from an HSE perspective, RIDOR reporting of incidents that involve people driving for work?
Can I just make one point, Karen? I think RIDOR is seen as being too administratively, it's red tape. I think some kind of RIDOR light, so that we can record the close calls, the near misses. I mean, you can imagine if a fleet was asked to record officially every single near miss that their drivers were having, it would be really a lot of red tape. I think this idea was put up a few years ago, and it was kicked out and under the red tape challenge by the then government. So I think it's finding something that isn't as sort of isn't all about the admin. It's about getting the most useful data, and we can process a lot more data now. I know fleets can, but certainly that's what I meant when I was saying earlier about increasing powers for HSE. HSE are an organisation that they're a regulator. They only enforce regulations. So asking them to do things beyond their powers doesn't work. So we have to increase their powers, and that part of that will be coming up with some kind of RIDOR for road safety that doesn't actually tie people up in red tape. Thank you.
Okay, that's perfect, because I think that our mindset from a ROSPA perspective is very much along those lines. It's about, if you've got enough data to say this is what the challenge is, how do you meet the challenge? So I think within a Scottish context, we're going to have much clearer data going forward to assist us in making the right choices, which is tremendous. Any other comments or reflections on this morning's presentations? I've got a couple of things to update you on when we get to that moment in time, but I'd like to invite any further observations or questions from the people that are involved, please.
Alan Blom here, Karen, I've got a question.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
But actually an observation really, and picking up on what I think Alan just said. In relation to HSE and their enforcement following collisions, accidents on the road, you mentioned the Tilly your trailer movement. I mean, that's been one of the sea changes in farming, developing a positive attitude, and that came out of HSE for the very first time, actually taking over the prosecution from the police following a fatality on the road when a young guy was driving a tractor and trailer which was inadequately braked, and he lost control and collided with a bridge parapet. And the tragedy of that situation, the farmer was prosecuted actually by HSE for the poor maintenance. And, it was the young lad's mother who set up that campaign, and is an ardent campaigner. And she say, Karen, she's spoken to your group there, and much more widely. She cared passionately and driven by personal motive. And to see HSE actually step up to the plate, as it were, for the first time to investigate that circumstance, you can read across others where they've always regarded road traffic accidents, collisions, call them what you will, as being police enforced. So that indicated a change. I would like to have asked that question from Nicola actually before we lost her, but does that set a precedent? HSE is already overstretched, of course. Absolutely. And there's plenty of other things there for them to look at too.
I know that the Tilly your trailer, I've heard Jane speak, and we've been speaking to Jane from a ScORSA perspective, but I know that when she's told her story, and we can send a link through to their information, people in construction were saying, why aren't we doing this in construction with our trailers? People in other sectors thinking, well, I just took the trailer up and off I go. So there was a lot of conversation about how that could be taken into different sectors. So we can pursue that from a ScORSA perspective within the network. And it would have been good to have the conversation about RIDOR light and data and this with Nicola, but I'm sure we'll have the opportunity going forward, because she certainly sees us as really important stakeholders as a group of ScORSA, and also as the individual members of ScORSA. Are there any other comments or observations just before I give you a couple of updates? Okay. We've been speaking over the last while about the driving risks at work toolkit that's part of the toolkit that the wider ScORSA network has access to. And we have been working with Healthy Working Lives and now Public Health Scotland, email that's managing that piece of work this morning. So the work on the toolkit and materials is now with external developers, and it will be available on a platform shortly for peer review. So that again is providing information that you can use to educate your managers, your drivers, get your systems up to speed for the management of driving risk, which is tremendous. So we'll keep that in the forefront for you as time progresses. We've got a third St Andrews webinar in a few weeks' time. I can't remember when it is because I've not looked that far ahead. Carolyn, what date is the next St Andrews webinar?
25th of February.
Okay, so hopefully those of you that are on the call this morning will get that in your diary. We're hoping that, what were the topics we were considering for the next webinar?
We were looking at including telematics, a brief update on technology and the gig economy, and also how it might apply with young drivers as well.
Okay, so would we, I think that I would like to include a comms update there, you know, so we can perhaps provide an early insight into what the comms toolkit that Andrew Tromans, who's with ROSPA's comms team, has been helping us to develop. So that can help you start maybe from March or the beginning of April, start helping towards meeting these road safety challenges that have been outlined on our journey to 2030 here in Scotland. So perhaps some comms input there, and would we be looking for any volunteers from the network, and don't all log off at once, volunteers from the network this morning? I mean, Frank and Sharon are two of the people I can see that have shared information about how they worked with telematics. Is that something we might be looking for?
Yeah, that's absolutely. I can drop them both a note and see what we might come up with for February, or indeed just for case studies going forward, because case studies are really important in sharing information with our members.
Yeah, and Teresa, you've just put your hand up. Gosh, I'm starting to understand how to use the technology. This is quite worrying. Kathy, can I come to you, please? Can you help?
It's all right, I'm unmuted. It just took a wee minute to come through.
Sound.
Yeah, everything that's been going on today has been really, really good, but also I think there's a need for the likes of district nurses, people who aren't primarily driving for an occupation but need to be driving as part of their occupation, to be included. We have massive teams, physios, occupational therapists, nurses, etc., that go out in their own vehicles as well as company vehicles. So maybe if we could kind of look at that kind of driving as well, rather than just driving for work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know the sort of key and essential workers that have driven throughout and have shift patterns and emergency requirements to extend the shift patterns, etc. We definitely want to have that conversation, Kathy. So maybe Carolyn and I can pick up with you with this morning.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, because I feel particularly strongly about, you know, for example, in some elements of the health service where people are driving literally across country.
Absolutely.
Especially in the borders. Well, yeah, I think I was just going to say, I'm sure we've spoken before about the challenges of rural borders. So I think it would be something we would want to pick up with you. And we could maybe blend that into next session as well, which would be great. Yeah,
that would be great.
Any other comments or reflections from this morning? Okay, well, your feedback is always welcome. Yep. Hello.
Hi there. Just a request, really. It would just be to, once we have the webinar link, if you could just share that on your social feeds and, you know, encourage other people to attend events in future, that'd be really fantastic.
Perfect. Well, I think in these days of, I don't know how many more meetings you guys have got today, but I've got several. And it seems to me that this online version of working life is, whilst it's invigorating and it's lovely to have you here where I am, it seems there's not an awful lot of thinking time. So I'm going to take another 10 minutes thinking time before I go into my next meeting, rather than somebody chasing me to hang up and join. So I can only say thanks very much indeed. Thanks for the community moving into this new way of working with us. And thanks indeed to Nicola, who's already left the meeting. But thanks indeed, Bertrand, for your persistence and support in terms of your contribution this morning. And I'm hopeful that we can help play our part in delivering a new strategy. So thanks very much, folks. And I feel warm now. So that's another benefit that's happened from this morning. So I look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you. Bye now.